All right, welcome back to the Daily Mastermind. George Wright III here with your daily dose of inspiration, motivation, and education. And today what I want to do is I want to do a review or a book summary of this book, Atomic Habits by James Clear. What I'm going to do is on Tuesdays, I'm going to try to do a book summary for you, because one of the things you've heard me say many, many times before is leaders are readers. Throughout my life, I've read, I can't even tell you, hundreds of books, but it's really a great source of information, knowledge, that you can apply in your life. And so what I want to do is I want to save you a little time. You know, the Daily Mastermind's goal is to provide that inspiration, motivation, and education. And I thought what I'd do is each week on Tuesday, I'll review a top business or personal development book. And more than just a review, I want to do a summary of it so I could give you sort of the cliff notes and inspire you to maybe do a little bit more research on your own. But at a minimum, on a weekly basis, I can give you the golden nuggets right out of each of these top business books. Books like Think and Grow Rich or on and on. But the bottom line is Atomic Habits is what I want to kind of talk to you about today. And so James Clear does a great job in Atomic Habits. He kind of starts it out with something interesting. He gives the definition of atomic and habits. Atomic is small amounts of things that are a source of immense energy or power. And habits are obviously routine, or things that are practiced or performed regularly, automatic responses to situations. So this idea of atomic habits, it generates this idea that success is a product of daily habits, not once-in-a-lifetime transformations. You know, success is going to happen, and you'll be able to predict your success and where you're going to end up in life by following a curve of these tiny gains or losses. It's that idea of 1% better every day. Because he says in the book, as a quote, habits are the compound interest of self-improvement. And so it's really about forgetting to set goals and starting to focus on the systems that you have in your life, the habits that you're creating. And changing your behavior is always a really challenging thing. And in the book, it talks about the fact that it's challenging because, number one, we change the wrong thing. And number two, we change it the wrong way. And so he talks a little bit more about the layers of behavior change that you need to consider. You got to consider changing your outcomes. You have to consider, and this is the outcomes are what you get, changing the processes, which is what you do, and changing your identity, which is what you believe. And outcome-based habits focus on what you want to achieve, but identity-based habits focus on who you want to become. And there's this idea that the highest degree of intrinsic motivation comes from habits that are part of your identity. So the book really emphasizes the fact that the most effective way to change your habit is not to focus on what you want, but to focus on what you want to become or who you want to become, becoming the best version of yourself, which I really, really love. And so he goes on in the book to talk about basically 4 simple steps or laws that it takes to change or create atomic habits. You've got to first make it obvious, second, make it attractive, third, make it easy, and fourth, make it satisfying. So let's break that down for you real quick. Law number 1 is make it obvious. Now, you don't lack motivation most of the time for habits, you lack clarity. So how do you start a new habit? Well, there's 2 really clear, simple strategies. Number 1, you can habit stack, which is identifying a current habit that you have and stacking a new habit on top of it. And you say things like, after I do this current habit, I'm going to do this other one. Or an intention formula, like pairing a new habit with a specific time and location. So I'm going to do this thing at this time and location. And I'll give you an example of this. I have learned to stack my affirmations with my workouts because I'm pretty consistent with my workouts. And so I stack them with my workouts, but I also pair them with when I get in the car after I'm at the gym and I'm driving home. I listen to my affirmations. So that's an example of habit stacking and the intention formula of tying it to a location and time. Now, motivation, James Clear kind of goes on to say, is really overrated. And the environment is really what matters the most, because environment is an invisible hand that shapes our human behavior. So small changes in the context or setting that you have can lead to some really large changes in behavior over time. And your environment is usually filled with cues, and that's why it triggers old behaviors and habits. And it's far easier to build new habits in a new environment because you're not fighting those old cues. And so I thought that was a really good thought to talk about habits being linked to environment versus motivation. And he also talks about the secret to self-control, and that's eliminating the exposure to tempting situations that tempt your bad behavior, because people with high self-control usually don't just have the ability to do it, they tend to spend less time in tempting situations. So you've got to remember that self-control is really just a short-term strategy. It doesn't really affect your long-term results. And so you've got to limit the exposure you have to bad, tempting situations. So now let's move on to law number 2. Law number 2 is make it attractive. We all get dopamine hits from behavior, and those dopamine hits sort of create a feedback loop that lead us to our behavior. And it's the anticipation of the reward, the dopamine hit, that really is what we're looking for. It's not really the fulfillment of it. All of us have experienced, achieving the level of success we want versus, or a goal versus the anticipation of it. And you definitely get a greater dopamine hit through the anticipation. So he talks about strategies to pair your actions with your need to do the actions rather than getting the actual reward. And so that anticipation, in other words. And also keep in mind, we tend to adopt behaviors from our social groups. He talks about in the book 3 powerful social groups: your friends and family, your tribe, and then powerful people that influence you. And powerful solutions to better build habits are to join a culture where your habits are both already a desired normal behavior, because obviously normal behavior overrides what you want to have for a behavior. If it's normal in the environment, that helps. And also, joining a social group where you already have something in common with the group, so that you work together to create those powerful behaviors. And so that's how you can basically make habits more attractive. Law number 3 talks about make it easy. Now, making it easy, the most effective form of learning is practice, not planning. So you've got to take action. And habit formation is through this repetition, which makes things automatic over time. And so remember, it's important, the amount of time that you have is not as important, the amount of time in an activity is not as important as the number of times that you do the activity, this action, this repetition. So it's not about how long you do an activity, it's the number of times. This goes back to that idea of neuroplasticity. The neurons that fire together, wire together, right? So making it easy. Human behavior also follows the law of least effort. So create an environment where doing things right is an easy thing, or it's as easy as possible, and reduce the friction associated with good behavior. These are things like laying your clothes out for the gym early, or lining up things to be easier to do whatever you need to do, rather than adding friction by making it more difficult to be able to do the behavior that you want. Because habits occur, when it's easier to do them, right? Another concept he talks about when he talks about making it easy is habits occur at the moment of decision. And sometimes those decisions just take a few seconds. So a couple of minutes can literally impact, hours, further in the day and throughout your life. So he talks about the idea of this 2-minute rule. The 2-minute rule is when you start a new habit, it should take less than 2 minutes to make that decision and do it. Because making decisions quickly can improve the habits over time. The decision is really the key. It's making those quick decisions to increase your habits. And another thing he talks about, a great strategy, is to use technology to automate your habits. Because using technology to automate your habits is a really reliable and effective way to guarantee the behavior. And so that's really several ideas that I think are really good to make it easy for you. Then law number 4 talks about make it satisfying. Now, we're more likely to repeat a behavior when we experience something that's satisfying, right? Remember that the human brain prioritizes immediate reward over delayed reward as well. So the first 3 laws, which are make it obvious, make it attractive, and make it easy, they increase the behavior getting done, But this fourth law of making it satisfying, it increases the odds that the behavior is going to get repeated again. It's going to get repeated again because we're satisfied with the behavior. So I love that idea and I love that law. But he goes on to talk about a habit tracker as being a very great, strategy or effective way to be able to track your progress and cause satisfaction. We all know what it's like when we can, keep score and see our progress. It's very satisfying. And so what'll happen is we strive not to break our cycles and we keep our streaks alive. So measuring or using a habit tracker is a great way to get your focus on creating these new habits. Another strategy he talks about is accountability partners, because we all benefit from this idea of social influence and validation. It's a really powerful motivator. And so when you use accountability partners, there adds this idea of satisfaction when you accomplish a task that's well done. And it also gives you that immediate cost if you don't take action because of that social interaction you're going to have knowing that you didn't accomplish the behavior. So that's about really getting that satisfaction. And really the secret to increasing your odds of success with behavior change long term. And he ends with this kind of final thought that I really like because it ties into a lot of stuff with the Daily Mastermind, is that you need to align your habits and your behavior with your natural talent. Because the right habits are easier to establish when the habit is easier. And it's easier to act when you don't feel like your natural talents misalign, right? When your natural talents, which you're good at, align with the habit, then it's much easier to create that habit long term. Now, there's a final caution in this book where he talks about the fact that habits plus deliberate practice really lead to mastery. See, the downside of creating great habits sometimes is that we become so automatic with things, we forget to focus on what we're doing, and we're not as aware of our behavior. So it's all about creating habits and deliberate practice or deliberate awareness, which are going to lead to your personal mastery. So that's kind of my overall summary of the book. Now, I've given you some real high-level topics, but at the end of the day, there's so many examples, there's so many strategies in this book. I really, really recommend it. Atomic Habits, Tiny Changes, Remarkable Results by James Clear. Check it out. I hope that's something that's given you some inspiration, motivation today to be able to help you throughout your week. I'm going to continue to give you some of these book summaries on Tuesdays. But do me a favor, share this episode with at least one person. If you found value in the episode, share it with someone so that we can continue to get this message out, build our community, and help others. I think you're going to find that it benefits you to be able to help and educate others as well. And hit me up on the Daily Mastermind on Facebook or Instagram. I'd love to get your feedback on this book. Tell me what's worked for you and what hasn't. And that's my message for today. I look forward to talking with you more tomorrow when we'll be doing some morning motivation on Wednesday. So have an amazing day, and I will talk with you then. My name is George Wright III, and this has been the Daily Mastermind.